Welcome back to the Mad County Build Series. As you can see, it is snowing. I'm walking in a pile of snow. It's been dangerously cold the last week, so I haven't been out here a ton. But I'm back out here today. I want to give you guys an update. On the end, I got all my wainscoting across, and then I got started on the metal up here. So this shouldn't take me too long to finish. I did have a little trouble with this wainscoting. With my rib lining up, which I'll take you to that right now. And once I'm done showing you that, I will take you inside and we're going to install this door in the back of the garage where I have to level off the concrete so I have a nice level spot to set the door on. So I'll take you through the problem I had here with this wainscoting, and then we'll go inside of that door. Yesterday I laid out and put this wainscoting on the end of the garage, and it only took me about an hour to do it, and I pulled the tape across there and marked all my 9-inch on centers. I knew they wouldn't hit the window, but what I was worried about is that my end trim wouldn't go over this rib. And so I pulled a tape measure, and for some reason when I pulled it, my 9-inch on center ended like right here, but when I put it up, the last rib ended here. So my problem now is my corner trim dies right on that rib. So that's a problem. About 1.25 inches off. I need to move it to the left. And if you watch what I do, if I forced it, you get this. It just looks real crappy. And I want it to be nice and square, so I'm just going to shift them. So it looks like I got this all taped. All the windows taped, all the tie back, or all the block it tape, house wrap. So I'm completely ready to put steel up on this end, but I got to fix this wainscot first because I want all my ribs to line up, and it'll just be easier. And I have enough play on each side of the windows with these ribs that it shouldn't affect my J-trim. So we're gonna go ahead and get her moved. Alright, you can see now it sits nice and square, and that rib isn't a problem. I was alright on all my J-trim for my windows. And then this end down here is still fine because we only had to move it 1.25 inches, and you have like 3 inches for that trim. So we're good. So 30-minute mistake, and the sad part about it is I even pulled a tape before I even started this to make sure I didn't make that mistake, and I still made it. So things happen, and you just got to be committed to doing the right thing and fixing it. And I feel really good now that I fixed it, and it only took 30 minutes, so I'm happy. Weather's been really crappy, but I need to get this door in. And if you remember, I told you that I knew that down here this concrete wasn't level, and I was going to show you guys how I was going to deal with that, so we're going to do that right now. I have to get this door in so I can get my J-trim up around it, so I can put my wainscoting and steel on this end of on this back side of the garage. So I told you with this door, this concrete is not flat, and you need a nice level surface for your door to fit on. You can shim it, but I don't like shimming these, and the reason being is because when you shim it, you're leaving a gap on one end or the other. So once I figure out which area has to be brought down, which is definitely this side, what happened is when they were pulling this, it's just they just got a little bit too much up in here and did get pulled back, partly because I had the styrofoam a little bit too high, and they were probably just matching it up with the styrofoam, so that's a little bit my fault. But these things happen, and I will tell you, like I've told you before, there's multiple ways to do everything. So I'm not here to tell you to do it my way. because there's more than one way to skin a cat. What I'm going to tell you is how I'm going to do something, and I'm going to tell you why I do it, and then it's up to you to figure out how you would like to do it. I want my door to sit flat on the concrete because I don't want any gaps below it, and then I can get a good seal when I run my silicone bead across there when I set the door in there. So that's why I'm going to choose to grind this. It's not much grinding. It'll be pretty easy. Alright guys, so it's all level. Got the door outside, I got my beads of silicone on here. Put silicone on the outside of the brick mold, so now I'm ready to put this in. So I just got to extend that wainscoting down along through here, all the way along. Alright guys, so we're up to this window, and I already have my bottom piece of J installed. I had to do it before I put this wainscot trim on. So basically what you do is you measure the width of the window and add 2 inches. And then after you add the 2 inches, you want to notch out an inch on each side. And you'll see why once we cut these next pieces. So the next piece, you'll measure the height of the window and add an inch to an inch and an eighth. I did a lot of research on how the best way to trim out windows on a steel building is. I've put a lot of metal on buildings over the years, but they've all been ag buildings and there's been no windows and stuff, so I've never really had to trim around windows. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with R&R buildings, but the way he trims out windows, I mean, everything I can find, reading on how to install, reading a book on how to build a post frame, to his channel, to anything else I could find, he's definitely, in my opinion, has the best way to trim out these windows. So that's how I've been doing it, and it's been working pretty good. I wouldn't say, obviously, I'm as good as he is, because this is the first time I've ever used that method, but it's working good. I'll go ahead and show it to you, even though probably a lot of you have seen it. But we're going to go ahead and cut these, get a measurement and cut them, and then we'll get them up. So while I go cut these pieces of trim for these 2 windows, I'm going to take you back, I don't know, probably a month now, to when I was mass producing all of the trim for these windows, and give you a couple tips. And then once we're done with that, I should be done cutting these pieces of trim, and I'll show you how I put them on. Alright guys, another little tip or trick that I'll show you is if you're cutting a lot of trim, it sucks when you have to, a lot of the little notches you have to make are an inch, so it sucks to have to get your tape measure out all the time. So what I learned when I was a tinner is to put your marks on your actual snips. So you measure down from the end of your snips an inch, and then you don't have to ever get your tape measures out when you're doing these notches. You just use those. So that's what I do. Back, I don't know, 20 years ago, I worked for a mechanical engineer, and I learned pipe fitting and tinning, and I made a lot of duct work, and a lot of that you had to make notches and stuff. So that's one of the things that they showed us when I was doing that. So just a little quick tip to save you a little time getting your tape measure out. Alright, little tip here. If you got a lot of windows or a lot of trim to cut, and there's a lot of repetitive cuts, kind of like I just showed you with the snips, by putting marks on your snips at 1 inch, that'll really help you. I have a ton of pieces to make that are all the same length. It's for the side pieces, the window up above. And so I made a little jig. It just helps you from having to get your tape measure out every time. So basically what I do, take a piece of 2x6 or 2x4, whatever you want to use, put a stop on it so you can butt your trim up against there. I know that for my side pieces up there, the window from top to bottom is 47.5, and I want to add 1 1/8 to that measurement. So we're at 48 5/8. So I mark 48 5/8 here. So now I can quickly just butt a piece of J trim up and transfer the mark onto my steel, and it saves a ton of time having to mark it with a tape measure. So just a quick tip if you're trying to mass produce trim. Alright, so now that we got these cut, we're going to go ahead and put them up. In this bottom trim, I like to just take a little sliver of that off up to that point there. I found for me that just allows my piece to fit in there a little better. So I'm going to have to do this with one hand. So now I'm just going to do a test fit. Looks like I need to take a little bit more off so I can get this in and cut my angle on this, and I should be good. I always like to test fit it first before I cut that angle, just to make sure that everything's going to fit the way I want it to. Alright, so I got my angle cut. This little tab on the inside, you got to bend out. And then I'm going to do one more test fit before I caulk it and put it up. Alright, looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and caulk it and put it up. You see, it turns out pretty nice. I mean, it's not perfect, but I think it looks good, and I think it'll do what it's supposed to do and keep the water out. So now that we got the two side pieces on, we'll put the metal over the top, and then we'll put the top J trim in. So I'll get those cut, get them put up, and then I'll show you how we put that top piece in. Alright, so I want to show you guys something really quick. This is a vinyl window with J trim in it. But if you look at this top, if you can see down in there or not, there's lips on both sides where this actually holds water where they were plastic welded together. So that's one reason I decided to put on J trim and trim this out myself, because that holds water there, and then the water would run right down all the way to the bottom, right into the edge of the metal, and there's no way you keep water out of there. Another thing you need to think about when you're trimming out vinyl windows is these corners. You need to take a utility knife and square them off, because where they're welded together, there's little ribs, and so you just put a utility knife on there and and square them off. I've already done this one, but a utility knife works pretty good, and then you get a nice flat edge and it won't mess your J-trim up. Alright, so we got the metal in around this window, so we're ready to measure and cut the top trim. So one thing you want to do when you're putting your metal up here above your window is you want to leave a gap here, and I found that 3/8 of an inch, 3/8 to 1/2 inch is a really good amount to leave, so you can get your trim tucked up underneath there without a lot of fight. So we'll go ahead and stick this piece up there, get it cut, and put it in. So the best way that I found, it's exactly what Kyle said, to mark these is you stick one end in till it butts up, take your pencil and just mark the other end, and then we're just going to make straight cuts on this. Alright, so on top of making sure you leave 3/8 to an 1/2 inch gap here, the next most important thing is this cut on one end of your J channel. And this, so you're just going to start, I like to go just a little bit above the top of this J, and then I'll just cut at an angle steadily up towards the top. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to get the end of this up in here. So you can pull the steel out, leave it unfastened down here. Run it in until it butts up down here. Alright, so feed this J trim in until it butts up against this end, and then you want to pull your steel out. And get that pushed up in there. And then once it's in, you'll see that you're in on both ends here. What you want to do is you want to pull it down. See how that was up like that? You want to push this in and pull the J out, and then you got a good joint right there. So your cut's actually up here and the water's going to be down here. So you have that's another reason that 3/8 cut above your window is good, because it actually leaves the cut up from the bottom of the J. And then you're going to come over here, do the same thing on this end. Push down on underneath and push down. And you got a nice seal. Now any water that comes down is going to run off, and it'll run down the side of the steel out here instead of inside the J channel. And then just run your screws through here, which will go through this trim piece too. Just make sure when you're screwing the steel, you push down on your J trim so it sits tight to the window. A couple of things that will help you immensely the first time you do this is making sure you don't have too many screws in around, because that once you screw this steel, it becomes very rigid, and you need this to be flexible to get that J-trim tucked up underneath there. So that's kind of an important key. And then as far as caulk goes, the only place that you really need to caulk is right here. Just put a little dab there and a little dab right there where that seam is. But I've had lots of rain and snow and stuff since I've had a lot of the windows, or the steel up in the windows, and I've got no leaking on the inside. You know, there's nothing on the inside so I can see. So I'm pretty excited about that. But just a shout out to R&R Buildings for sharing that tip on how to trim out windows, because it's been very helpful to me. Like I said, I put up steel, but not around windows and stuff, so I really like the way he does it, and I think it is going to make a really big difference on waterproofing around the windows. So alright, well that's a wrap for this episode, guys. I'm just plugging away. This weather is pretty tough, so I'm sorry this has been slow, but I'm just going to keep at this steel. As you can see, I just got a little bit left up there in that peak, and then I got the back side of the garage to do, and then we'll get inside, and then it should pick up. The pace should pick up a little bit, and it'll be a little more exciting. So appreciate you guys hanging in there. Thanks for watching this episode, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share us if you haven't already. So we'll catch you on the next video.